So it's finally happened. Jack Dorsey has officially stepped down as CEO of Twitter, and normally this will be cause for great celebration, right? We know how Twitter's, what it's become, what a cesspool it's become, with all the bans and no one able to really speak what they truly, or just say what they really want to say if they're anywhere, right of Stalin. Just total nonsense ruling after nonsense ruling in Twitter. Normally we would be so happy to hear that Jack Dorsey has stepped down as CEO of Twitter. Unfortunately, the man taking over for him looks to be possibly far, far worse than anything that Jack Dorsey ever could have been. So we got him right here, Mr. Paraj Agra, blah blah blah. I can't say your name because you're Indian, which is already right there a red flag. And what I mean by that, and hear me out here, I got nothing against Indians as a whole, right? Being someone who's worked in a lot of different businesses, and especially in the franchise business, like I've worked with a lot of Indians, all right? I got nothing against Indians as a whole. However, India has a long history of oppression of everyone, mind you, of everyone. They don't have any real rights over there. So it's a red flag in the sense of he's coming from a country that has no respect for any of the foundations of this country, of freedom, of liberty, of, individualism as a whole. And this is really shown because people have been asking, what would this mean for freedom of speech on Twitter? Twitter kind of is the public square in some regards. It needs to have the same protections that the public square in real life would have as well. And someone asked him about the ideas of free speech on Twitter, and this is what he had to say. Our role is not to be bound by the First Amendment, but our role is to serve a healthy public conversation, and our moves are reflective of things that we believe lead to healthier public conversations. The kind of things that we do about this is focus less, there's that right there, focus less on thinking about free speech, but thinking about how the times have changed. Now I'm over here thinking freedom of speech, this is the pinnacle of times. Freedom of speech is the pinnacle of beliefs. Without freedom of speech, we have nothing. Without freedom of speech, you don't even have truly the freedom to think. Because speaking, just the act of having a conversation with someone, the act of even speaking to like a camera or speaking to a mirror, whatever you choose to do, articulating your thoughts and what you have in your mind, that is what allows you to truly discover what you really believe. You don't ever discover that if you cannot speak freely. When people control your speech, they don't just control what you say, they also control what you think. Because, to be honest, what you say really does determine what you think. If you say repeatedly, again and again, I'm a failure, I'm a failure, I'm a failure, you will inadvertently start thinking of yourself in that mindset. And the inverse is also true, right? If you start saying, every day, I got this, I can succeed, I have what it takes, I have what it takes, that does have a positive impact. We've seen it in study after study. So we control the words that we say. You control many aspects of the populace. So this whole idea right here is to focus less about free speech, but thinking about how the times have changed. What has changed about the times? If anything, we're going backwards in time. Freedom of speech is a new concept. Freedom of speech is not normal. Freedom of speech is a radical idea that everyone has the right to think and speak freely. It's a basic human right. And him saying we're not going to so when he says we're going to think less about freedom of speech, what he's really saying is we're going to think less about human rights. And that's how we should put it. He is saying we think less about human rights and more about how the times have changed. That is what he really is saying when he says these words. When he says we're not bound by the First Amendment, what he's saying is we're not bound by human rights. We're not bound by the basic human right of freedom of speech. That is what he means by this. And of course, that's not his only controversial takes. This one's a bit of a side piece, but it's still worth mentioning. A tweet they made about a decade ago, admittedly, but it does speak to something here. So this is one thing which also CEO of Twitter apparently didn't clean his, Twitter history, I guess, over here. I mean, you think before he takes a position, he'll clear it all off to make sure stuff like this doesn't pop up. But he tweeted, if they are not going to make a distinction between Muslims and extremists, then why should I distinguish between white people and racist? Well, for one, that's just an idiotic thing. I've seen other people repost this saying, well, tell me where he's wrong. Are you freaking slow? Are you that thick? Are you that stupid? Here's the big difference right now. Muslim is an ideology. Like again, like how Christianity is an ideology. I'm a Christian because I believe in the tenets of Christianity. Someone's a Muslim because they believe in the tenets that come with Islam. All right, it is a religion, is an ideology. You can choose to be Muslim, and you can choose to no longer be a Muslim. Well, in some places you can choose to no longer be a Muslim. In other places, you might have some trouble there. But when it comes to being white, of course, I'm white. I can't choose not to be white. The best I can do is try to get a tan, I guess. That's the best I can do. I can't choose not to be white. I just is what it is. So it's just an idiotic take in general. It's an idiotic mindset to have. Again, though, these are people who truly do look at mostly white people and make broad generalizations. And I'll have a video involving this, mind you, at 3 o'clock, but they make broad generalizations about white people and then claim they're not the racist. It's almost amusing if it wasn't so depressing to also see. So he already has a bad history here with when it comes to First Amendment rights. He has tweets like this. He has many other tweets that are also very iffy, I would say that. But not long after he took over, Twitter has now instituted some new rules. So we have this right here. Beginning today, we will not allow the sharing of private media such as images or videos of private individuals without their consent. Publishing people's private info is also prohibited under the policy, as is threatening or incentivizing others to do so. Now, on the face of it, it doesn't sound too bad, right? Prohibition on or prohibited, sharing people's private info, and that's one thing, right? That's doxing. So yes, we've kind of had the idea that doxing people is bad. But videos and images without their consent. Now they do continue here. Let's unpack what this means. Please, I would like to know. This policy update will help curb the misuse of media to harass, intimidate, and reveal the identities of private individuals, which disproportionately impact women, activists, dissidents, and members of minority communities. Now, what I'd like to know right now is, say if a white person's in China, are they considered a minority in the eyes of Twitter safety? I think we know the answer to this, right? They don't really talk about minorities in general across, they claim to be functioning on a world scale, but white people aren't the majority of the world. If that's the case, then we are actually a minority if they actually are functioning on the world scale as they claim to always be doing. But we aren't. They're not going to treat us as a minority community one bit, right? They won't. This is a way for them to, of course, protect certain people that they want to protect and not protect others, right? It disproportionately impacts women, activists, dissidents, and members of minority communities. They're going to look at white males and just say, no, you're not a minority, which means you're not really that harmed by this sort of stuff anyway, and they're probably going to allow it. Because they continue on here, images and videos that show people participating in public events like large-scale protests, sporting events, etc., will generally not violate this policy. And it goes on to say, for more, what is not in violation, read the full policy here, which the full policy kind of goes in the same words of generally, possibly, maybe. That way they have a lot of wiggle room. Why would they want wiggle room? And the reason is because they want to stop people like Andy Ngo. As we all know, Andy Ngo really, really, really loves posting mugshots. He really does love posting mugshots of all these, Antifa members and Black Lives Matter members who get arrested. He loves to post all this stuff, which is frankly good, right? And we need someone like him. Andy Ngo, of course, when it came to the, Waukesha massacre that took place over in Wisconsin, where the black supremacists, went and drove through a crowd of people, killing, about, I think it was like half a dozen people and running over about 60 total people. A black supremacist attack on a white neighborhood, we never would have known any of that information had not been for people like Andy Ngo, who went and dug up this person's history, because the media sure as hell wasn't. The media was saying, oh, it was an SUV crash. It was people like Andy Ngo who went and dug through this person's history, pulled it up and said, hey, look at this, guys. This person is actually a black supremacist who talked about killing white people. All right, we would not have known this stuff if not for the independent journalist. But tell me, do you think they're going to consider Andy Ngo a credible source? Do you think they're going to consider many other individual journalists credible sources? I don't think so. I think they'll say if CNN puts, of course, the Cuffington kids out there, they'll go, well, this is a news story, so it'll be allowed. But when Andy Ngo posts something about, of course, the black extremists that are attacking, the black extremists that attacked those Asian girls over in Philly, if he posts something like that, they'll go, well, this was a private incident. This isn't really news and anything that we deem, important when it comes to news. It's removed because you can't be sharing private information. This opens the door for them to start cutting people off, not for harassing people, but for just for sharing pictures without consent. And here's the good thing. This might be a good thing here. This might destroy Twitter as a platform. It truly might, because the reason why Twitter still functions the way it does, as well as it does currently, is because at the very least it has allowed moderates to still exist. People like Tim Pool are still on Twitter. People like Ben Shapiro are still on Twitter. Michael Knowles, people who are, yes, they're on the right. Well, maybe not Tim Pool, but like Michael Knowles, Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, all of them, they're all on the right, but they're not radical in any sense of the word, right? I mean, they're allowed, and they just are cutting it down. The minute there's nothing but leftists on Twitter then runs into the same problem sites like Parler did. All right, Parler did have a problem before they got shut down, all right? Same thing with Gab, same thing with a lot of the alternatives currently. And even with the alternative video platforms, BitChute included. And I put my videos on BitChute because I do like BitChute as a platform overall. There is a problem of an echo chamber, and it's boring. I hate to say it, but it's boring. I try to post some of my other videos from my other channels also on these platforms because, not that they have that many subscribers or views, to be perfectly honest. They barely have 1,000. But just to help break up the monotony over there, because for the most part, it's all political because they're the ones who are being cut off first. But as the moderates begin to be cut off as well from these platforms, they then sit there and move over to the alternatives. And then Twitter has the problem of being the echo chamber. All right, Twitter then has the same problem that Parler did in the sense of there is no conflict, there is no real debate. It's just a bunch of people all shaking hands going, I agree, which is, let's face it, is kind of boring. So this might end up killing Twitter, and that will be interesting. But the important thing to remember here is this man, this CEO, at least Jack Dorsey, paid lip service to the First Amendment. He said, there's some issues when it comes to social media, and he came up with a bunch of BS reasons as to why some people are banned and some people aren't. But he paid lip service to the idea. This CEO straight up says, human rights are not a priority to them. First Amendment rights are not a priority to them. Freedom of speech is not a priority to him. He flat out says it. So it'll be interesting to see where all this goes. It will be pretty interesting to see where all this goes. But remember, I'm telling you, give it a month or two, or just wait till the next big attack happens where Andy Ngo, of course, posts all that information again. He will be taken off Twitter here soon. All right, he is not long for the Twitter world, I'll say that. And that might be for the best. It really might be for the best. Maybe we all need to move on to, an alternate side. And you know what? If you know good alternate media or alt tech sites that you use routinely, leave it in the comments below so other people also know what sites there are. Obviously, I have right over here, BitChute, I'm Odyssey, Rumble, all that kind of stuff. I don't really do much on Twitter or Parler or any of those, to be perfectly honest, but I am on there. You just look up Barbecue Barnes. But yeah, if you know a good alt tech site, leave it in the comments below. Yeah, and we really need to start occasionally using these sites a bit more and more and more, and hopefully encourage more people to move over to them. So leave it in the comments below, as well as, of course, if you enjoyed this video, hey, thumbs up. Really do appreciate it. Really does help out a lot. As well as, of course, if you're not already, hey, subscribe to a channel. You made it this far. You made it this far through the video. What has it been? Like 14 minutes? You clearly enjoy this content. So subscribe. See more. We got another video coming out at 3 p.m. today. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be talking again real soon.